Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world, and today we're reviewing directed numbers. So we'll start by looking at what they are and then go on to operations with them. So first we'll look at the number line. So this is the line containing all the numbers that you know. Of course, I'm only writing whole numbers. I'm not going to write, fractions and decimals, but they do come on the number line. So like between 0 and 1, half would be about here, 0.75 lies in that range, and so on. Now you probably know that this line actually goes on forever. Numbers don't stop at 6. They go 7, 8, 9, up to 1,000,000, and they just keep going. So there is no highest number. Numbers never end. What you probably also realize is that as we're going to the right along here, the numbers are getting larger than or greater. So 6 is greater than 5, 5 is greater than 4, and so on. But this number line is, surprise, surprise, a line. And in maths, a line is something that goes forever in two directions. So this line actually goes forever in the left direction as well. And over on the other side, we have numbers like 1, 2, 3 again. But the thing is, these numbers are actually all smaller than 0. So because numbers going to the right are getting larger, that means numbers going to the left are getting smaller. So what we do is we put a sign in front of all of these numbers to indicate that they're below 0. So minus 5 means 5 below 0, whereas the number 5 means 5 above 0. Now we could write a sign on all of these numbers, calling them positive 1, positive 2, and so on. Usually we don't do that. So if you write, say, the number 2, it's implied that it is positive 2 or 2 above 0. So all the numbers to the left of 0 are less than 0, and they are called negative numbers, and of course all the numbers to the right are called positive numbers. Now it can get a bit confusing because it's not possible for you to actually have a negative quantity of something. You can't have -1 cards in your hand or whatever. The number -1 is still very important though. So we know that the freezing point of water is 0 degrees Celsius. But here in Canberra, during winter, the temperature often gets below that. It's colder than the freezing point of water. It can get down to, say, -1 degrees or -1 degrees, and that means 1 degree below 0. Another time you might come across negative numbers, say at the bank. You can't have -$20, but you may have a bank balance of -20. The negative is just a direction sign. It tells you that you, in this case, owe the bank $20 rather than actually have $20. So the negative sign is just a direction sign, hence the name directed numbers. So let's go ahead and look at comparing these numbers, which means to determine which is larger. So when you're comparing numbers, you can use two symbols. The one that points to the right means greater than. That makes sense, of course, because numbers to the right on the number line are getting larger or greater. And if it points to the left, that means smaller than or less than, because numbers are getting smaller. Another way you can try and remember this is think of these two symbols as a crocodile's mouth with teeth in them. The crocodile wants to eat the larger number. So let's say I want to compare the number 5 and 3. I know you all know that 5 is more than 3, but which symbol will we use? Well, the crocodile wants to eat the larger number, so we'll have it pointing to the right. This statement here says 5 is greater than 3. But let's look on the other side of the number line at -5 and -3. So 5 is to the right of 3, but -5 is actually to the left of -3. So that means -5 is less than -3. So the symbol points to the left. Again, the crocodile wants to eat the bigger number. In this case, -3 is a bigger number. So that can get a bit confusing. So 20 is greater than 12, but that means -20 is less than -12. I mean, that makes sense. If it was -20 outside, it's a lot colder than if it was -12 degrees outside. So if you'd like to copy this down, please do so, because I'm about to move on to addition and subtraction of direct numbers. Okay, so let's look at an example of addition and subtraction of negative numbers. So let's say I want to do some -5 plus 3. So we can use the number line above to do that. So each of the things I've just written down has a meaning. So when you're adding or subtracting numbers, the first number tells you where to start on the number line. The second number tells you how many places along the number line that you're going to move. So all of these will involve moving along the number line. Now, the addition or subtraction sign tells you the direction in which you're going to move. So if it is an addition, as it is in this case, that means you go to the right on the number line. If it is a negative sign, so that means you're subtracting, then that means you go to the left. So let's look at the number line above and do this. So -5 plus 3 means start at -5. We want to move 3 spots because the second number is 3. So because it is -5 plus 3, we want to move 3 spots to the right. So we go 1 spot, 2 spots, 3 to the right, and we end up with -5 plus 3 is -2. Our answer is where we ended up. So let's go ahead and do another example. Let's say I want to do -1 subtract 3. So I would start at -1 on the number line, because that's the first number. Now I want to subtract, so this time I want to go to the left. The second number is again 3, so I'm going to move 3 spots to the left. 1, 2, 3. I end up at -4. So -1 minus 3 is -4. Now these were easy because in the first case I added a positive number, and in the second case I subtracted a positive number. But what happens when I need to add or subtract a negative number? So I'm about to rub out what's on your screen, so please pause the video and copy it down if you need. So to understand addition and subtraction of negative numbers, we need to understand the concept of opposites. So two numbers are opposite if they're the same number, but they have a different sign. So remember, of course, the sign is the negative sign or the positive 9, the thing in front of the number. So for example, 4 and -4 are opposites. The opposite of 10 is -10. The opposite of -3 is +3. That's pretty simple. So what's this used for? Well, when we want to add a negative number, we actually subtract its opposite. And when we want to subtract a negative number, we add its opposite. So you may like to copy this down, pause the video now if you like, but I'm going to do an example. But firstly, I'll tell you what these mean in practical terms. There's an easy way to remember that. If you have a plus and a minus next to each other in the sum, that becomes a minus. Two negatives next to each other becomes a positive. So let's do a few examples to get this right. So let's say I have 7 plus -5. So I'm adding a negative number. So I need to subtract its opposite. So the opposite of -5 is 5, +5. So that's the same as 7 minus 5. You all know that that's just equal to 2. So let's say I have 4 subtract -3. Now it doesn't matter that I have the bracket here. That's just for punctuation to kind of make it a little easier to read. But I still have a negative next to a negative, so that becomes a plus. So that becomes 4 plus 3. I add the opposite of -3, and that gives me, of course, 7. So 4 subtract -3 equals 7. So let's say I have something like -6 plus -4. Now what I want you to do is I don't want you to think, okay, the answer must be negative because there's a negative and a positive next to each other. That's not what we're talking about. We're just saying that these two together change it to a negative sign. I'm not saying the answer must be negative. In this case, -6 plus -4 gives you -10. But if I have just 6 plus -4, the answer's not going to be negative. It's just that this sign in the middle becomes negative. So it becomes 6 minus 4, which is 2. 6 plus -4 is +2. Okay, now we're going to look at multiplying and dividing very quickly. So please copy down these examples if you need. So multiplying and dividing is probably a lot easier. So what you do when you're dealing with negative numbers is you do the multiplication or division as normal first. Now then you decide whether your answer will be positive or negative. And you do that according to the following rule. So if both numbers are negative or both are positive, then the answer you get must be positive. But if only one of the numbers is negative and the other is positive, the answer you get will be negative. So whether or not the answer is positive or negative depends on the signs of the numbers you're multiplying together. So let's say I want to do negative 3 times 7. So what I do is I just do 3 times 7, like normal, is 21. Now I decide whether my answer is positive or negative. So you can see only one of the numbers, the 3, was negative, and the other was positive. So because of this rule here, my answer must be negative. Negative 4 times negative 8. So 4 times 8 is 32. Both numbers are negative, so the answer must be positive. So I can put a positive sign here or not, it doesn't matter. Same for division. Let's say I have negative 12 divided by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Only one of the numbers is negative. So the answer must be negative. What about if I wanted to do something like negative, say 6 times 4 times negative 1? So what I do in those cases is I do the first two, then I get the answer and multiply it by the next number. So negative 6 times by 4, so 6 times 4 is 24, but only one of the numbers was negative. So negative 6 times 4 gives me negative 24, and then I times that by negative 1. So 24 times 1 is 24, both numbers were negative, and so the answer must be positive. I just want you to make sure that you don't mix up the rules of multiplication and division with addition and subtraction. So let's say I have negative 48 divided by negative 6, for example. So negative 48 divided by negative 6, I just do 48 divided 6. Now, because both numbers were negative, the answer is positive, right? So that's the rule for multiplication and division. But if I want to do negative 48 plus negative 6, I am adding a negative and a negative, but this rule does not work for addition and subtraction. If both numbers are negative, it doesn't mean if you add them together, the answer will be positive. It means if you multiply them or divide them together, the answer will be positive. Negative 48 plus negative 6 is still a negative number. It's negative 54. All right, sorry about the long video. Hope you've enjoyed it. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.